I'm King Link, and it's time for the Humble Choice for May 2021. As always, I play each game for an hour, and then I'm going to summarize the games in terms of who will enjoy it or wants to play it. And as almost always, there's a few times that they didn't do it, we have 12 games to check out, and Premium and Classic members get all 12. So let's dive in. Metro Exodus. This is an excellent first-person shooter with stealth and survival elements, though neither of those categories is really as strong as the words may seem. Players can sneak around behind enemies and will have to scavenge ammo, filters, even gas masks in a post-apocalyptic setting. The story in Metro Exodus has taken a huge step forward in how they're telling the story. From an opening trade ride that gives you the backstory or short but efficient cutscenes. I was hooked almost immediately and I really wanted to know more about this world. There's also a big action set piece about an hour into the game, which got me to play a little more than I normally do, and honestly, it was worth it. The graphics in this game are especially good, and will probably look even better in the new enhanced edition that came out on May 6th. I accidentally played the original version for the video, and it still looked great. The fire effects were amazing. So pick this up if you like the Metro franchise, the two previous games, or want an FPS with more story and an adventure feeling. This is not a run-and-gun shooter, and the story here is going to be, depressing with the post-apocalyptic setting. It's not necessarily a happy story, but it's a well-told one. Though also, if you want something to play on your new NVIDIA cards with ray tracing and everything, check out the enhanced edition here. It looks fantastic from what I've seen. Darksiders Genesis. This is a perfectly acceptable game. No better, no worse. There's really nothing that really stands out in Darksiders Genesis. It's a prequel to the main franchise's story, done in a Diablo style of a top-down view where the player takes on the roles of strife and war and kills as many demons as they can. The first hour here is quite mindless. While there is supposed to be some puzzle elements in the game, what was available here was a trudge through what starts as an interesting looking location, but becomes more of the same after about 30 to 40 minutes. The level ends with a rather underwhelming boss fight and a weak cutscene, and players are then sent to the next location, the Void. This feels like a Diablo clone made by someone on a very strict budget and who put in just enough work in the game. There's a feeling of grinding lurking just around the corner, and while the whiff of the original game is here, the experience here doesn't really live up to the 3 earlier titles in the franchise. Pick this up if you want another Diablo clone and don't mind a weaker version, or if you must have everything Darksiders. But as a fan of the series, I really couldn't get up any excitement for this title, though nothing really ruined my experience. It just felt average, which is disappointing for the franchise. Hellpoint. This is a Souls-like game, at least that's the easiest way to describe Hellpoint, but it's nowhere near the quality or level of most Soul-like games. Souls-like games have a lot of competition, and while Hellpoint has some good character models, they look great here, it also lacks the atmosphere which drives the genre. Hellpoint seems to use the same mechanics that, so many of the games in this genre have. The slow, methodical attacks, the very high damage and danger from enemies, and a level system that feels like it was pulled from pretty much every title before it. It's just a shame it never really reaches the same quality bar as those previous titles. The biggest frustration for me is that fighting the boss was interesting, but there was actually an enemy that feels significantly harder and more damaging than the first boss right before her arena, and if that's the case, well, why isn't that one the boss? So pick this up if you've played every Souls-like game. It's not bad, but it's going to come after Neo 1 and 2, Dark Souls 1 through 3, Sekiro, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, The Surge 1 and 2, and probably 12 other titles I forgot to mention. This isn't even pretending to be different like in the case of Blasphemous or even Hollow Knight. Otherwise, I think you can find better entertainment elsewhere. Cook Serve Delicious 3. This is a family favorite. My daughter and I have previously dropped about 20 hours into this game and are looking to play even more. We even included it in a video about co-op games that we play as a team. Cook Serve Delicious 3 is an intense cooking game that will have you racing to fill orders while juggling multiple tickets and pressing different controller combinations to fill those orders. Each game in this franchise is a little different. This time around, players are cooking in a food truck that is racing between locations. Rather than running a full day, players will just have to serve food in at least 3 different locations and prep between them. Players will create their menu and hopefully avoid upsetting customers. But the food in Cook Serve Delicious 3 is beautiful. It makes me hungry even if I've just finished dinner. Probably just watching this video is going to make me hungry again. The co-op mode is extremely well made but will challenge players, and there's a lot of different dishes and setups that will keep players from being complacent. Pick this up if you like cooking games or want a hectic rush. This game will be overwhelming, but enjoyable. It's a bit simplistic in what it expects of the player from the actions, but it will become increasingly challenging, especially if you're just trying to push for gold medals for every level in the game like we do. Though it is just cooking, so if you want something more, you're probably going to be underwhelmed. Levelhead. This is Mario Maker. I could dance around that fact, but this is a very solid platformer with a level editor that's focused on allowing players to create, design, and share their levels and play other players' levels. And for that, it's excellent. I love Mario Maker, but I wanted a game like that on PC, and Levelhead does that and more. But it also gives players a humorous story and cutscenes and a new character that isn't bogged down with 30 years of previous games. In fact, with a substantial campaign and what appears to be many levels with a well thought out discovery system for online levels, players are going to have a ton of content to keep them busy. There's a good challenge in the campaign with interesting designs, creative uses of different pieces, levels that will really push players' abilities. And as mentioned, the fantastic online system will give players ways to keep finding new levels to tackle that are equally as difficult and interesting. Of course, there is some easier challenges in there as well. So pick this up if you like platformers like Mario Maker or want to create something and share it with others. The ability to create your levels is going to be huge for some players, and others will love playing and experiencing those levels. At the same time, I think I've been clear. This is mostly a platformer with some very deep tools. If you don't love platformers or don't want to see user-created content, this probably won't be up your alley, but for me, I think this is amazing. Fury Unleashed. Take the roguelite genre, add in a comic book aesthetic, and a story about a comic book character pretty much coming to life, and you'll find a rather solid and interesting game, aka Fury Unleashed. Players are here to take down enemies, and there are more than enough of them for players to fight through. Fury Unleashed is a hard but fair roguelite. The game will require a high level of precision at times, but also offer numerous bonuses and upgrades as players play through it. Player builds are mostly customized by weapons and items they find as they play through. Fury Unleashed looks great too. The boss battles feel epic, the enemy choices are solid, and something made me want to keep coming back even after I finished my session. I wish the developers went just a bit further with the comic style, but there's enough here to shine. Pick this up if you want a solid roguelite. This will never rival the top tier of the genre though, but it is extremely enjoyable. There's also a difficulty option, so if you want an easier playthrough and the game becomes too challenging, you have that. If you're not a fan of roguelites, this one might not speak to you, but I still think it is pretty sweet. Size matters. I kind of dislike games that forget to tell players the goal or give them a purpose. Just a small scene. Size Matters focuses on a scientist who has accidentally created a potion that will make him shrink over time and must create the antidote before he shrinks too small. At least that's what I've learned from the Steam description and what seems to be the gameplay so far. It's an interesting concept, but honestly it's a poor execution. Much of Size Matters is about running around and finding ingredients and recipes and then following those instructions to create the antidote, and that's really it. After you solve a level, you'll repeat the process in different rooms and slightly different situations. The idea of a shrinking player could have been more interesting, especially in a level-based game, but mostly it's about restricting access to some areas, and if planned out, players can ensure they won't have problems reaching what they'll have to find once they know where it is. The big problem is there's nothing that makes this really exciting. It feels like a streamer game as you can name the elements after anyone you want. Putting Bucky in the microwave for my review? Oh no! It's entertaining to laugh about as someone else plays, but there's very little purpose to play it more than a few times. After an hour, I was starting to enjoy the concept, but I also felt like I had seen everything the game had to offer and I was done with it. Pick this up if you want a great concept that doesn't stick around too long. But in reality, I think there's probably a better version of this game somewhere else, because this one didn't hold my attention that much. There are some bugs also, like getting stuck in the tutorial part of the game, which was extremely annoying. Morkredd. This is what the developers call a physics-based puzzle game, but it's a cooperative game that can be played by one player. The goal of the game is to avoid the shadows and guide a giant light ball through a dungeon as you push it around. In single player, it's an extremely challenging game similar to patting your head and rubbing your belly. Each character is controlled with a thumbstick on your controller, and while most of the game isn't time-based, you'll find yourself mixing up which character is which, and getting caught in the shadows, even the shadows of your own partner, will kill you. On the other hand, the two-player couch co-op is very well done and brings an enjoyable experience. This is one of the few games I played that almost requires two players for the difficulty. And when you work together, there's an enjoyable exploration at the core of the game, though really the difficulty drops off an extreme amount as well. So pick this up if you want to challenge your motor skills in single player, or you want a relaxing, chill game you can play with someone, potentially even someone who doesn't play a lot of video games in the first place. The challenge for Morkredd is more about working as a team, and in that, Morkredd works rather well. Otherwise though, I think it is safe to skip. Relicta. This is a first-person physics-based puzzler, which means it's like Portal or Talos Principle, though this time around the big gimmick is the ability to enable or disable gravity for blocks as well as magnetize them. There's also a story that Relicta keeps trying to make the player care about. The concept is fine, but I found myself tuning out after that first hour. I really didn't care about any of the characters here, and a few of them felt like they were having vicious mood swings in between each line reading. Relicta could have been better off just focusing on the levels, which were well designed. The puzzles in Relicta are rather solid, and after the first couple sets, they started to introduce interesting and unique concepts that kept me having to understand the rules of the world. I'm wondering if there's even more rules or if I've kind of reached the limit, but I bet you there's still more out there. So pick this up if you enjoy, first-person, physics-based block puzzle games, though I would say this isn't as well done as either Talos Principle or Portal, but of course those are like the kings of the genre. If you don't like puzzle games, though, there's not much here for you. Retimed. This is a multiplayer platforming and shooting game with players trying to kill each other a set number of times. The controls here are good, and there's even a single player set of levels. Those single player levels are just waves of enemies with the player having to kill them all. At higher difficulties, players need to avoid dying to get better results. The controls are well done and the gameplay is interesting, but the experience is lacking, especially as this feels almost like a practice mode. The real meat of the game is intended to be multiplayer. Up to 4 players can join and fight each other, trying to shoot each other and avoid each other's attacks. The big concept here is that when a bullet is about to hit the player, they can move out of the way in a time bubble. There's also a ricochet mechanic that works. The big problem, though, is this is another dead multiplayer game, and is focused on that. While you can play local multiplayer, the game is designed for large online communities, and that doesn't exist. The game has 0 players before it was in Humble Bundle, and even with 50 players online right now, I couldn't match with anyone. Luckily, I was streaming, someone on my stream played with me, so Biohazard Battle, thank you very much for your assistance, but otherwise, I guess everyone's just farming cards or something. Pick this up if you want a weak single-player tutorial or have a group of friends who want to play something new and you like the look of this game. I had a good time playing online, but I don't think this game has any longevity with online multiplayer, and I probably enjoy almost anything we played. Unless you know people who want to play this exact game, I think you should skip it. Family Man. Don't judge a book by its cover. Family Man proves that old adage is correct. This is a pretty rough-looking game, so when I picked it up, I thought it would be also a rough experience, but instead, Family Man is actually a solid game with a great opening. The game starts with the player moving through life, getting married, having a kid, being forced to make a few hard choices, and being punished for that. What follows leads the player to need to pay back a mafioso, and barely any time to do that. Family Man constantly pushes the player to earn money and try to save his family, as well as avoiding death. At its core, Family Man is a time management game. You have 10 minutes a day to do various tasks and need to earn money and keep the family happy at the same time, though both of those tasks become more challenging each day. The game also says there's multiple endings, but has a substantial length, so I wasn't able to see any of them yet. Pick this up if you like time management games. It's an interesting concept, and I think this is well done, though I also wonder how much I'm going to play because the experience is a bit draining. Still, this is a game you'll probably sit down with for a couple of hours, at least to get a good grasp of everything going on. Vane. The first 30 minutes of my playthrough were rough. There's a beautiful experience of flying around as a bird, which gets rather boring as nothing much happens unless you go to certain locations. However, after that time, I suddenly found where the game wanted me to go, and Vane begins, as you'll see here. Vane is beautiful no matter what it does, though. It's a very stylized look, but also impressive in the graphics and art. I constantly thought about how unique the game felt and how beautiful it could be. While the game could be frustrating and force the player to wander at times, the world the player finds themselves in is constantly worth exploring. Vane's biggest problem, though, is its unwillingness to tell the player where it wants them to go or what it wants them to do, so players will either have to get it or be forced to mindlessly wander this massive land and hope they don't lose their way. Pick this up if you want a relatively short but impressive game. It's only a couple hours long. While the opening is rough, once the story and experience started moving, I found the second half of my hour to have me wanting to see what would happen next. Though it is an exploration-heavy game with no action and a few annoyances, it will still satisfy those looking to have a unique experience. That's all for the 12 games in the choice, but there is one bonus game, and this month it's Summertime Madness. In this game, a painter who lives in war-torn Prague accepts a deal where he can explore his painted landscapes, but he must leave them before a set time, midnight. It's an odd but mostly unnecessary setup. Players will have either 3 or 6 hours depending on which mode players choose, and it appears that these are real time limits. Players can explore the beautiful landscapes and will be presented with many very solid and well-designed puzzles. The puzzles I worked my way through all felt unique, rather than puzzles I had seen before or could be solved by just looking at the layout for long enough. Though the final puzzle I reached stumped me, I'm tempted to return to play more. There's actually also collectibles in the form of music. I'm not sure exactly where that leads, but that's an interesting touch as well. Pick this up if you want a solid puzzle game. I say this is more in the realm of something like Braid, Fez, or The Witness, in that it's extremely well crafted and designed and will mentally challenge most players. So that's it for the bundle this month. What do I think about it? Well, most of the time I like the variety of the bundle, and this month there are quite a few different games, but everything felt rather average for the most part, with only 3 or 4 games standing out. Nothing was that terrible either. I will mention also that quite a few games here had co-op. I mentioned playing co-op on a few of them. On the other side, there's also Darksiders Genesis, Hellpoint. Both of those have couch co-op, I believe. And so there's about 6 games that you can play couch co-op. If you're looking for that, it's a good bundle for that. We should talk about the elephant in the room, in my opinion. That is Metro Exodus. And I think it's the first month I might recommend people pick up the 3-game option if they don't already have a deal that gives them all the games for cheaper. I know people want a big game every month. Metro Exodus is clearly that. But I feel like this choice is what we'll get if they go for the big games. A big massive game and a bunch of other also rans. I'm not really a huge fan after seeing everything here, but I am really glad to see Metro Exodus. I think the quality here, though, is a bit low, even though, that high of Metro Exodus is pretty freaking good. So let's just talk about the weakest and the strongest of the month and see what's on those lists. And the third weakest of the month is Darksiders Genesis. As mentioned, this is an average game. It's not really that weak, but from the franchise, this is so beneath where I think it should be. Darksiders is a great concept, so I'm really sad that they couldn't create something more unique here. I could honestly easily have put Hellpoint here for being the other headliner, but I was more excited to see Darksiders and equally ambivalent after playing it. The second weakest of this month is Size Matters. I just didn't find this game to be that enjoyable, and it's one of the only games this month that I was finished playing after an hour of game time, in that I had no real reason to return. I'll keep saying that it's a good concept, but weak execution. And the weakest of this month is Retimed. Dead game, it's a dead game. I have to keep coming up with ways to say that. It's the only game that shouldn't be in this bundle at all. I understand why the devs want to be here, but I don't understand why Humble puts these games in, knowing that, they don't have a player base already. I'm honestly sick of talking about them, but they will consistently be my weakest because of that. So from there, we can talk about the strongest of the month. And we'll go with the 5th strongest this month is Relicta. This is absolutely a personal choice. I like block puzzle games and I want more of this. Also, nothing else really spoke to me, but you could easily put Family Man or Morkredd here. But this is kind of a participation award this month, which speaks to the quality of the bundle. The 4th strongest of the month is Fury Unleashed. I'd like to see more of this game. Roguelites are good, and I like what Fury Unleashed did. There's a good progression here, and there's tons of systems I want to figure out over time. And I forgot to mention, but you can actually use Steam Workshop and get different heads for your character. You might have seen me wearing the Disturbed face or the T-800 from Terminator. Very cool. The 3rd strongest of this month is Cook Serve Delicious 3. This is a fun game, and like I mentioned, my daughter and I already love this one. I put in 20 hours already, and I'd probably put in even more if we could get our schedules to work out. She also wants to play more, and it doesn't hurt that the game looks and plays great, even if it is extremely intense at times. The 2nd strongest of the month is Levelhead. I played 90 minutes of this, which I wasn't expecting to. I'll play more of it, definitely. I love the idea of creating levels and playing them. The story was actually funny, which I almost never say about a game, and I had a great time seeing what other players have already made. I'm sitting here thinking about when I can play more. And the strongest of this month is Metro Exodus. Nothing else was close. I mean, that's obvious. This is the game that will decide if you should grab the bundle. It's that easy. Honestly, this looks amazing. Having the enhanced edition on PC now makes it even better if you can play it. And after the 2 previous games, it's clear this team knows what they're doing. If you're curious about this title, give it a go. You're not going to get a better deal than this. And that's what I have for the humble choice of May 2021. I want to take 1 minute and follow up a previous video I did on Humble, and with it taking a 30% cut of bundle sales. Humble actually has relented and restored the sliders, though they are defaulting to 30% to Humble, so you can set your own division for money. I just wanted to quickly mention that if you saw that video, it's been updated. I'm not going to be praising them for it. They handled the whole situation horribly. It led them to doing bad, and then people praising them for doing less bad. I hate when companies do that. This is a situation I feel that they created and then resolved. At least the sliders are back. I also want to say this month I hit 2,000 subscribers. Once again, thank you to everyone who has subscribed. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to my channel. Ringing that bell would also help, and that means a lot to me. Also, liking and sharing this video means just as much. I mean, that's the only way this channel can really grow. Feel free to tell me what games you enjoyed this month or which games made you hold off. Also, I play through these games on Twitch. If you're interested, there's a nice small community there who I enjoy interacting with, who play the games and we can talk. If you want to check that out next month, I'll put a link in the description. My channel is KingLink Reviews with an underscore. I also will be popping up a video from last year where my daughter and I talked about games we played together, one of which is, of course, Cook Serve Delicious. We'll talk more in depth about that game there as well. And at the same time, I'm also be putting up a video that I just released talking as a former game developer on emulation and ROMs. I have a great little story there, and I hope you check that out. Until then, I'm King Link, and thanks for watching.